Ok, parfait.
Now we know one semi-final is going to pit Diego Maradona against the host Italy. He's going to get a great reaction there. But that's another little while away. We're going to decide the other semi-final today, starting off with Germany versus Czechoslovakia, and then England versus Cameroon. So Turlock, you're going to take us through Germany, Czechoslovakia here first. Is Rudi Voller still banned for this game?
He is. We're missing bubble permed saliva victim Rudi Voller for this one. Karl-Heinz Riedle has stepped in his place, and yeah, this is kind of something of a forgotten game. Not in Czechoslovakia, where it's kind of the high point of their football in many ways, I suppose. Just before that period when the two countries divorced, but probably the least remembered of the four very dramatic Italia 90 quarterfinals, and it's an exceptionally one-sided game. West Germany absolutely dominate not quite from start to end, because Bielek has a free kick well saved within the first 5 minutes. But Guido Buchwald is somehow as a defender getting on the end of almost everything Germany create. He has a weak shot that he really should score, saved well by Steichgal after 17 minutes, and then just a minute later from the same action or the same phase of play, he has a header cleared off the line by Hasek, and that's actually one of 3 headers from corners that West Germany will have cleared off the line throughout this game. It's almost like some sort of mini game going on within the match. But after 25 minutes, we were talking about Eamon Dunphy's kind of supervillain origin story. I think this might well be Jurgen Klinsmann's origin as the notorious diver, because it's actually a really nice piece of skill. He wriggles past a couple of players on the left, and then kind of tries to, or whether he tries to or not, he slaloms through Hovenets and Straka, and is brought down by one, both, or neither of them, depending on which replay you look. You watch. It's an absolutely outrageous dive, whether there's contact or not.
Can I just say though, I think the problem comes from, I think the Czechs in general were a little bit clumsy in this game. I think quite a few of them were booked. And if you look back on this, there's about 4 clumsy tackles that go in just before that. I think it's as Klinsmann's cutting in from the left. Someone tries to clip him, someone tries to clip him. And then the player, as you said, whichever one of the players end up fouling him, they still sort of have their legs dangling out there, just asking Klinsmann to dive over them. So, as you said, as much of a villain as you want to call him in this, it's so stupid from the Czechs.
It is, but I think it's also a reflection of the fact that that's what Klinsmann's looking for. I think he's not particularly looking to get a shot off here. He's looking to get a plausible dive in. The referee is persuaded. The Czechoslovaks were somewhat understandably miffed by the fact that the referee was not only an Austrian, but an Austrian called Helmut Kohl, who of course was also the Chancellor of West Germany at the time. But he points to the spot anyway, and it's Matthäus who just fires an unstoppable penalty past Steichgal. It's not down the middle, but it's so hard and so well struck to the goalkeeper's left that even if he goes the right way, he's not getting near it. Czechoslovakia have I think a decent shout for a penalty, and one of those that the classic phrase, if it's anywhere else on the pitch, it's given, because it's quite innocuous, but there is contact, but that's not given. And yeah, Hasek manages in his own private duel with German corners, manages to clear one off the line from Klinsmann again just before half time. 1-0 at half time to West Germany. Second half, exactly the same pattern. West Germany's not quite peppering the goal, but they have all the possession. I don't know if the Czechoslovaks are beginning to feel the effects of what's been a very kind of a competitive tournament for them to date, but they don't really contribute a huge amount. Unbelievably, Guido Buchwald has another header from a corner booted off the line. He's not destined to score today. But Bine and Brema have 2 more shots well saved. Bine takes it round Stejska later in the second half, and I think gets brought down. It's far more plausible a penalty than the one that was awarded in the first half, but no dice on this occasion. And then after 70 minutes, one of the more unlucky, I suppose, red cards of the tournament, at least how Lubomir Moravcik tells it, because he's already been booked. He goes down very easily looking for a penalty on the byline. It's not given. And what he says he did was kind of thrust his leg towards the referee to indicate where the contact was or what the contact was. And as he does that, his boot flies off towards the referee. Something of a kind of Alex Ferguson, David Beckham type scenario, except it doesn't actually hit him, but the referee very, very calmly and teutonically, if I can say that, produces a second yellow card. That's it for Moravcik's World Cup, and that's pretty much it for the Czechoslovaks World Cup. Nemecek misses a decent enough opportunity at the end. He doesn't catch it, so it's not a chance as such, but it's a good position. But that's pretty much the only serious chance the Czechoslovaks have in the whole game. And it finishes up after probably their least impressive performance of the tournament, but one that was still laden with chances. West Germany 1, Czechoslovakia 0.
On the shoe flying off in the David Beckham element, I've just 2 things on that. One, didn't Vincent Brown, he asked, was it Ken Early? It was Ken Early, I think, on Tonight with Vincent Brown about the hairdryer, which he thought he conflated that story with Alex Ferguson throwing a hairdryer at David Beckham. He believed that's what that incident where he kicked the boot and it hit Beckham in the head was, that he'd fucked a hairdryer at him. That's what he thought the hairdryer treatment was, literal battery. And also, I've actually played in a game, a friend of mine actually, where he was tackled, badly enough, his shoe came off and he used that shoe to attack the man who tackled him. Just on this exit for Czechoslovakia, we've sort of talked about the break of a couple of different countries, and I think this is a particularly interesting one. We mentioned it's the fall of communism there just before this, and a great time in their history, and a great time for them to enjoy the national team. As I said, there was only a couple of hundreds supporters generally at their away games before this, whereas they travelled in numbers for this kind of game. And you can find some interesting quotes from Valklad Nemecek talking about how fondly he remembers it. And he talks about the buses of, there wouldn't have been a lot of people staying over because, their currency at the time, the Czechoslovak crowns, would have been quite weak compared to the lira. So you think about how long they had to make that last. And as I mentioned, the player there a moment ago, Nemecek, talks about a lot of buses coming from Czechoslovakia after matches and pretty much driving straight up or straight back. So it's an interesting time in their history and good time for their football team and good time for their nation as well, by the sounds of it. But as we know, Rome would have been rip-off city, so they wouldn't have been lasting all that long there.
Newspapers are one of the very few things that come cheap in Rome. The Eternal City is certainly cashing in on the World Cup finals. It's become rip-off city. Whether it's a restaurant, a bar or a shop, the chances are that you'll have to pay well over the top. Taxis seem to have a supplement for just about everything. One tried to charge me an extra £3 just because he had a radio.
Well, we've had a couple of low-scoring quarterfinals up until this point, Dave. We come to Cameroon versus England, and I think it's important at this point to talk a little bit about England's shape. They've left McMahon out of the team. David Platt's come in, and it's a pretty adventurous, attacking, and maybe a little bit of an arrogant lineup, actually, at this point in the tournament, because I suppose you're always going to call people that go attacking adventurous or arrogant, but it probably implies that they don't have as much to be worried about with Cameroon, who, again, have got top man Roger Milla on the bench.
Yeah, it is a bit kind of swashbuckling, and maybe you call it the sort of gung-ho approach that England take in the game. And I think maybe Bobby Robson denied it after the game, but I think they were probably taken a bit by surprise by the quality of the Cameroon team. Cameroon very much dominated the first quarter. They had a few good chances, but the best one fell to the Francois Oman-Biyaak, the hero from the Argentina game on the opening day, who should score when he's one-on-one with Peter Shilton, but puts a fairly tame effort that's blocked by the keeper. And it comes back to haunt them after 25 minutes when I used the word swashbuckling there a few minutes ago. Very much so in the sense that Stuart Pearce was finding himself a lot of the game up near the Cameroon box, and he floats in a beautiful cross for David Platt to bury from the back post. Even so, Cameroon didn't seem to get them down too much. They had a few more chances before the break and really should have equalised. Thomas Leby twice went very close and really probably should have done better. At halftime, Roger Milla came on. I think he'll go on to be one of the iconic figures of this tournament and of World Cup football in general. And he really changes the game. It's him who wins the penalty that brings Cameroon level just after the hour, drifting through the defence and nice control, and he's taken down by Paul Gascoigne. Emmanuel Koundé then buries the penalty. Cameroon, straight after the goal, they bring on Eugene Ekeke, and he scores within 2 minutes. Once again, it's Roger Milla. It's a beautiful, lovely little piece of skill and kind of shows the composure that maybe they didn't have in the first half. And he plays in Ekeke for what is a sublime finish. And just on that one, I'd really watch out for the celebrations afterwards, where Oman-Biyaak produces probably one of the athletic moments of the tournament, if not World Cup history, jumping fully up, not only on Ekeke's shoulders, but he jumps up and lands with his legs on Ekeke's shoulders, and somehow Ekeke manages to not, break his neck, because it's absolutely spectacular to watch. It's almost as good as the game.
It's almost in that setting where you'd expect them to put on a big coat and try and sneak into like a cinema as one person. It's that kind of a situation.
Exactly. But I think it's more suited to the Winter Olympics than it is to the Football World Cup. But we'll move on anyway. And Cameroon should actually add to their lead after that. They continue to be dominant. They have all the momentum, and it really doesn't look like England are going to get back into the game. They've tried an awful lot, but they don't seem to be capable of breaking down the Cameroon rearguard. And it's only due to a rash tackle by Benjamin Massing that I think it's probably a little harsh. It looked like Lineker was already going down, but Massing, already on a yellow, raises his foot like that, and Lineker is not going to turn down an opportunity like that, and he buries the penalty himself. So it goes to extra time, and Cameroon still, despite the fact that they've never really been at this stage before, they've probably never had to dig this deep before, they're still probably marginally the better team. But a defence splitting ball in the end from Gaza, a lovely little pass that takes out the last remaining sweeper, and Lineker's through on goal, and again he sort of manufactures the contact with the goalkeeper's outstretched arm, and it's probably just about a penalty. And again, you wouldn't really bet against Lineker from the spot. He puts it in, and it's unfortunate because I think if the game had gone to penalties, I would have favoured Cameroon purely because they're the more technically gifted team, and not just because it was England, and England have they're not going to win a penalty shootout at a major tournament until 2018.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's really unfortunate as well. There's 8 minutes before the 90. Cameroon should probably solidify and keep everyone back. 8 minutes to go, they get pulled back, and I think always when you see a shift in momentum like that, you're a little bit worried for the kind of the perceived weaker team going into extra time. How many of the penalties were actually penalties? Watching this back, I would say probably none.
I think the Cameroon, the first one probably was, and I think the one in extra time probably was. I don't really know about the one that got England level. I'm just not. I don't know how much contact there was, but I think Lineker was almost on the ground already.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you watch all of them back, and you're like, if none of them are given, you wouldn't be too stunned. But it's a shame for Cameroon. As you said, 8 minutes away from going through, and there's probably a bit of the naivety of a team who didn't come into this all that well set up, considering what we said about their manager and the likes of Milla being sort of parachuted in last minute as well. But it is one of the great joys of the tournament gone after this kind of game.
And I think it's one of those, it's a classic tournament in the sense that it's two teams playing against each other with a sweeper. And I think both teams probably need a sweeper because they're both kind of a bit rubbish defensively. So it turns into one of those sort of interesting sort of tactical games that you don't really see anymore.
The referee, Codesal from Mexico, is deeply annoying character who has these emphatic gestures when he awards anything or blows the match up. So I think that's what's added to the kind of added to the dubiety of these penalties over the years.
Well, that's it for Cameroon. Unfortunately, we've lost one of the more enjoyable teams to watch in this tournament, but we are now pretty set with our semi-finals. We know very much that it is going to be Italy, Argentina, and England, West Germany. Let's check in at home, though, first before we kick on to another couple of break days here. Turlock, how are things looking for Ireland's big welcome home? I imagine, it's got to be beyond the heroes' welcome, surely.
Absolutely. What's really interesting about it is that the players themselves and Jack Charlton really have no conception of what's coming, and I think they struggle to get their heads around it because, from their perspective, they've made the quarterfinals. They haven't done anything too earth-shattering, and of course in those days, there's no social media, there's not as much direct contact from home. So I think they were, Con Houlihan's famous line about missing the World Cup because he was in Italy. I think there's an element of that with the players, but they're shell shocked when they get back. The fans start assembling at Dublin Airport from 1 o'clock. The flight doesn't get in till 6:30. It's been dubbed relabeled the Saint Jack. I think it's also it's interesting how we talk about Italia 90 being sort of the brink of the Celtic Tiger era, which I think any connection is nonsense, but it's interesting that there's still kind of hints of the 80s and of kind of chintzy, cheesy Irish 80s-ness about this, because what the players are presented with by Aer Lingus are a set of inscribed tankards and an Aer Lingus teddy each. It's also mentioned that the senior hostess which is what they were called at the time, on the flight is Pat Jennings' sister Marie Jennings. So, yeah.
Just when you mentioned the sort of giveaway and prizes, I remember seeing in the footage of the RTÉ studio that they have, I can't remember, one of those places that makes some lovely crystal, this or that, Waterford crystal or Kilkenny crystal or something like that. So anyway, they have a scale World Cup trophy made out of crystal that one of the players are going to get, and you can vote on which player is going to get it. So Paul McGrath for us. I'm not sure if Paul McGrath got it in the end. I assume he did.
Yeah, Paul McGrath did get player of the tournament. I'm not sure that would be allowed now. FIFA actually have very strict rules on replicating the World Cup. Believe it or not, you're not allowed to do it. You're certainly not allowed to do it to scale, which is a little bit out of order, I think. Charlie Haughey, somewhat similar to Leo Varadkar, is a great man for claiming credit for things he had very little to do with. He is very eager to associate himself with the team, even though, as we know, he ruled entirely out of order the idea of a bank holiday for the Romania game. But he's gone over at the last minute for the Italy game and come back with the side. He was in the dressing room minutes after the Ireland were knocked out, and he gives a standard politician's speech. Of course, one thing that complicates matters for everyone, not least the Gardaí and the city authorities, is that on the very same day, Nelson Mandela is in Dublin to receive the freedom of the city at the Mansion House. And it's kind of, watching these events intersect, it's kind of like the end of Goodfellas, where it's just constant, it's just this kind of frantic cavalcade of events that seemingly have nothing to do with one another, but have got hopelessly intertwined. But yeah, I think it's interesting that this homecoming is as much part of Italia 90 when people talk about the phenomenon of Italia 90 as any of the, as anything that happened on the field. There's estimates of 500,000 to 1 million people on the streets of Dublin for this one. So yeah, I think it's a fitting send-off, and a send-off without which the position of Italia 90 in Irish society would be very different. As I said, when people talk about Italia 90, it's as much about this reaction and about this spontaneous kind of outpouring of joy on the streets of Dublin as the football itself. So yeah, a very memorable day. And I suppose the slightly ironic thing is that very few of the players had any reason to return to Ireland because they don't live or play there.
There was a party very much there for them to turn up, and sure, Paul had to get his big giant crystal World Cup, so there was a few reasons to return. All right, well look, we've got a rest day again tomorrow, so no podcast tomorrow, but we'll be back with the semi-finals on the 3rd of July.
Hamza, Fede, Onana, Tatao, Magwa, Omandi, Funde Hekeke, Kono Hebwele.